hospital. We're gonna look at the Bunker Queen versus Mauga matchup in Jump City. We're gonna talk about fight planning. We're gonna talk about ults. Okay, let's get into it. First, the pathing to point. What we want is the enemy team to be on point so then we can get our break or queen onto the enemies. If they do take the point without any resistance and they're all on point, we want our Sojourn up here. So pathing to the point, if we can go right side, TP right side, it incentivizes the enemies to take the point first and leave their backline open so we can rotate into the enemies, depending on whichever side we want to go to, and it lets us take less poke damage with more damage on the tank here. First point goes pretty well. The only thing I would say, we have to be more diligent tracking the Mauga cooldown. All Mauga wants to do is initiate. If he's smart, he's going to charge in, and then he's going to use his E on top of us. When that happens, look at the example. He charges in, uses E on top of us. We have to kite it. We used E first, which is bad for him. But we shout, we kite, and we shred the Mauga after he uses his E. Our Sojourn gets free rails onto everyone. If there's no one free out here, we just shoot the Mauga, and the Mauga is useless without his E. So he entered this fight, so that helps us out. But as soon as his E is done, we have to shred him. Let's look at second fight, Holden. Defense, again, is the same thing. We want the Mauga to use his E before going in. If he charges in, again, we have to kite. Our main priority is our Sojourn up top. And then we can build ult faster than the enemy because we're all grouped up here and we hold them at the choke. If they get our Sojourn off, we have to bait them, again, point to rush their backline. So if we use shout here and are able to hold it and win the trade against the Mauga, then that's good. But most likely, the Mauga will play smart and not use this E. But if he does use E and we cannot hold the chokehold, then we use shout defensively. We can't go in until he uses his E. And all we have to do is pray that our Sojourn hits a good shot on the enemies. And if we can't hit a good shot, then we need to keep on rotating outwards until we build an ult. So we cannot rush into the enemies when Mauga still has his E. And so it's all preparatory work for our Tracer, our Sojourn, to come zone them, and then our Queen to hold them at the choke to gain that advantage before they get to the choke. Let's look at this next fight here. If we win this fight, this is important, we're going to have every ult possible. If you're at 99-0, you want to use every ult to win this point, or every ult to get to the 99-0. So whenever we get to the point where they have no objective and we have any ults, we want to set up our fight so that we can use all our ults and get it to 99-0. Because 99-0 is one fight away, and they only have 2 fights, and they need to use every ult to get it past this point. So we will win the ult econ if we get here. If it is like, let's go to where our attack is, 79-42, we can't use every ult to retake it. But if the fight is winnable and we know we're going to win, use every ult to get past this because we're going to swap. We're going to swap out this, we might swap out this. So going into this fight, this is really good. What happens is the Mauga uses his E, goes in, and we come zone him, where he doesn't have any more abilities by the time that he's onto us. If you watch from our Sojourn's POV, we just sit here frying. So the Sojourn has a high ground. We need more assistance from the Lucio for the Sojourn on the high ground and coordinate that. But all we're tracking is a Mauga E. And the Mauga can't do anything because he needs to hold space, except he can't hold space without pushing forward by using his E. Look at the next fight here. Again, on this point, one other crucial thing, don't care about the point. You don't need the point. what we need is our Sojourn on the high ground, and we burn the enemies, and then we can rush with our Queen Shout into the back line. If there's ever a moment where we have the choice of group up and push the advantage, or contest the point, we always on this point group up and push the advantage. So let's take a look at an example where our main objective is keep our Sojourn up on this high ground. If you look at what happens, the Reaper's on point, our Tracer's marking. This is fine. Once they get to the point, now this is free. We should all be grouped with our Queen here. Our Lucio can be pocketing our Tracer, but they should be able to get out and then help our Queen and our Sojourn here. And then the enemy team is stuck on point, and we have also Himiko using ult. Remember, first point, you want to use every ult to win. If you over ult, that's fine on this point. But if we pocket our Sojourn here and have our Tracer disengage, they should never win from the low ground. Either their healers are stuck over here, and this is terrible for them, no matter what healer composition they're playing. Or their healers get rushed down because it's a 4v5. It's the same thing as the first point neutral, where if they don't do this funny thing, and it turns into a stalemate. If we're rotating around, again, if they drop, then we take the high ground with our Sojourn. If they don't drop, then we try to win the fight by, again, playing for the cooldown trade and rushing the back line. If they send one, then we rush the core in the back line and we get our Sojourn to top. Let's look at the setup into the next point. For this point, outside points, I would rather see Queen instead of Mauga, and I would rather see Bat instead of Grid. Because we just won the points, it's okay to be on here, but as soon as we die, remember Baptiste on outside and Queen on the outside. The reason why is because Mauga, again, you cannot push until you have your E, and you have to cover so much distance to be able to push out. On this point, if we can, let's split. Our tank holds one of these two chokeholds. Our Sojourn right here with our flex support, and then main support and flex DPS right here. So Tracer looking for opportunities here with our Lucio. Our Mauga come zoning them. If they decide to rush our Mauga, our Lucio needs to peel back. Otherwise, we just have our flex support and Himiko just burning the enemies right here. Especially on this composition. They cannot discord, because if they discord, we break line of sight and set tempo. So it's okay to start here, but as soon as they start matching, this is terrible for our Sojourn. We can start here, but we need to make sure to immediately drop and get our Sojourn right here. This is the best spot on this point. The only time that this is not good is if they have the tank that can, or if they have an ult that can take the high ground easily, or we have, for example, Blizzard and we need to stuff the chokehold. Otherwise, remember, the number one thing is we play for our Sojourn and we let our Sojourn just shoot the Mauga or the enemy tank, whatever tank they're on. Looking at the swaps, as soon as we die, again, go Queen, go Baptiste on these points. On the inside points, Baptiste is not as good because you don't have spots like this to window, so you need to swap to Curie to be able to retake when you die. If we're on defense, Baptiste is fine to stay. Into the next point. If we cannot stuff, let's look at the neutral and the defense here. If we're in the neutral, we want to hold this ground and we want to get our team stabilized here. If we cannot stabilize here, then we want to come zone the enemies across the bridge. Again, you never drop point on here. If you drop point, you instantly lose the fight. So if we can stuff here and have our backline stabilize here, this is good. If we have to fight here and our backline cannot stabilize, especially against Mauga, sometimes against Queen, if you're playing against a Reinhardt or a Ram, if you have Overclock or OC, either of these ultimates, stand over here and you can come zone them and have your tank solo hold up here. With your Tracer either on point, over flank, contesting, marking the main, and your Lucio here for flex position to be able to mark if they decide to send a flanker, or enable your tank to get out, and then we come zone them across the entire bridge or into point. If they decide to stabilize here and then they build ults, then we could push them and pressure and push up from the bridge, but that's the only time that we get to push up. Otherwise, we get punished if we push. So here, this fight, what happens is we cannot stabilize our core there. We don't communicate, and so we get our core stuck right here, and we cannot stuff, and so there's no come zone, and we have nowhere for our Sojourn to be able to shoot them. So then we have to end up fighting inside of his E. So if we end up fighting inside of his E, then it's too hard. It's all set up to prevent that. Looking at this fight, let me remember what happens here. On retake, on the inside points, you can swap to Kiri instead of back, because it's easier to build your, or you get better ultimates because you don't have to set up for the window, and you can also cleanse and set tempo by cleansing. I think this flank is good. We get EMP'd. Make sure we're scouting as well, so we can avoid the EMP if they decide to push in.
Yeah.
On this point, since we're outside again, if we get queen, this fight is, we cannot win this fight because they have both support ults. But what we can do is try to come zone them through here. While they're walking through here, we want to be able to hit the Zen or any of the squishies and rail them and just shoot the Mauga and force him, shoot the Mauga into neutral and force him to use his E, and then you can hit these people after. So if he uses his E first before he charges in, they will never win this fight. And so the reason why Queen is better than Mauga here is because you can force his E by knifing people, and you can also shout to get away from him. If he doesn't use his E on anyone and you shout and get away from his E, then we just shoot the Mauga and there's no way that they ever win. Because we are just Sojourn cooking their backline. So after we force these two ultimates, this fight is good. We have to lose that fight. Once we get back in here, Genji is okay. I think Tracer is better, so especially unless you're in the vertical inside points. So keeping Tracer on this one so then you can mark and flank, and be able to support our Sojourn better by applying more pressure to the enemies and being more mobile. Unless, like I said, we're on a vertical map. On this one, we want to try to bait the engage from the Mauga first before going in. If we can send our Tracer to the side and or Lucio to the side, that'd be good. So it forces the Mauga to either make the decision to split, so then they can't engage in main, or engage in main and use his E. But if we know that the Mauga is going to be playing in main, if he uses his E, we have to track his E. If he uses it, then we just walk away, and afterwards we shoot the Mauga when he doesn't have his E. It's just that simple. All we have to do is make sure that we don't get rushed during the E, and we position and rotate conservatively if we know that they're trying to rush. But now that since he doesn't have his E, everyone should be shooting the Mauga. We get staggered into the last point. This point, again, we were talking about this, creating a come zone to the enemy team, but we can keep our queen here. Our Sojourn is the number one person here, and all we have to do is our default, Queen, Sojourn, Flex support, Flex main support, and Flex DPS marking the sides. If they're not pushing in, then we can have everyone focused in this one lane, pressuring the enemy tank. Otherwise, the number one thing is stay alive and let our Sojourn shoot the enemies. going into the attack again, the first thing is we have to shoot the Mauga until he uses his E on the attack. So our decision making here is really good. I like how you shout as soon as the Mauga uses his E and we get out and disengage for that. And then we can punish them going back in. When they don't have the Mauga, we can go harder into the enemies, and we need to save our cooldowns as much as we can. When he uses his E, it's defense. We don't try to kill. We try to survive with our cooldowns. And afterwards, then we can use our cooldowns to punish the enemies, because they can't do anything here without the Mauga E. This is a really good flank over here onto the point. So watch the retake again. One more time from the perspective of our Sojourn. Again, we want to force this Mauga to use his cooldowns immediately, and after he uses his cooldowns, then we can go back in. As you can see, they're useless without the Mauga. So some of the biggest things that I want us to practice is, first point, looking at the ult economy and looking at our positioning and decision making on how fast and where we want to take the fights. We want to take the fight and force them to use their cooldowns first so then we can come zone them. Otherwise, we just wait for our Sojourn, and that's a recurring thing that we have to think. In our neutrals, we start thinking about killing the enemies rather than just enabling our Sojourn, because our Sojourn will kill the enemies eventually. One major thing is everyone needs to think, how can I play for the stronger neutral here? And sometimes it's backing up if you don't have the cooldown advantage. So you have to facilitate the, between our main support, flex support, and tank, facilitate talking about the cooldowns and saying if you don't have shout or I use shout and they have Mauga, everyone should already be tracking these two cooldowns in your head as well as speed. Or communicating the speed, because when we lose the aggression and we need to give up the space to be able to let our Sojourn continue to deal damage, it's very important that we're all on the same page and we rotate to the same place wherever the flex support wants to go, wherever the flex support is safest. And this shows up again in the outside point, where all we need to do is enable our Sojourn on the high ground and come zone them onto point. And that's pretty much just every single point here. The second thing is the ult economy on the first point. I want us to get this down and master this, but especially after we win the first point, we want to play as slowly into the second one as possible to build our ultimates if we're close. And then if we win this fight, based off of we get an ultimate or we come zone them well enough, then we'll have the priority to be able to 99-0, and after we 99-0 them, we'll probably retake. If we don't win, we just retake and 99-0 on the next wave, and then we can swap afterwards to Bat and Mauga if we're inside and we're getting rolled. Otherwise, keeping the queen so then we can come zone the enemies. Yeah, that's it. I think short VOD. Some things that we need to like diligently practice inside this map to get it down though. I'll contact for individual VODs as well.